Thank you for tuning in to another episode of This Week in Real Estate. This is episode 269, broadcast live Wednesday, March 27th, 2024. Oh my goodness. And I already hear feedback because I was sharing the YouTube channel. Okay, sorry about that. Well, I'm glad you guys are joining us. We have a lot to talk about today. We have tons in the NAR department to talk about today. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody for joining us on YouTube. Because of your support on YouTube, we are actually now members of the YouTube Partner Program. Woohoo! So that means you can comment and submit the super chats and all that stuff. We're also broadcasting today on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, then you can comment. I can display your comment from Facebook. Same thing with LinkedIn. And we're broadcasting on Instagram. So we're on Ray Zorback, RAYZORBACK. We're also on the T-Wire Pod. So thank you everyone for joining there. I don't have a way to display your comment if you comment there, but I have both of those chats up, and I always try to bring you guys into the conversation throughout the show. Hi, Jeremy Knight. Jeremy Knight just tuned in. Hey, how's it going, man? We also have some cool stuff happening. I've been talking about the contributors group. I created a WhatsApp group for that. So I'll have a link in the show notes in the description, and I'll also tell you guys how to find that in a little bit. But I'm excited to dive in to these news articles today because there is a lot that we need to talk about. There's some, we've been hearing a lot about the NAR settlement. We've been hearing a lot of pontificating about who's included, who's not included. And so the first article basically goes over that. Who exactly is going to be included and who is not included, and what does that really mean? So Inman has an article that says who's out, the brokerages that are not covered by the NAR settlement. This is interesting because we've heard about this $2 billion rule, that if you've done over $2 billion, then you're not going to be covered by this, which last week we talked about a formula that was included making Compass pay like $517 million. Well, Compass settled. What's up, Zachary Loft? Thanks for joining. Compass wound up settling, and they wound up settling for far less than the $517 million. They settled for, I think it was like $51 million. But here's the list of who's included and who's not included. The reason why they said they had this cutoff for the $2 billion, they said the focus is on the large corporate real estate brokers. He said that seemed to be the logical place for the cutoff. The biggest thing, this is Catchmark, by the way. The biggest thing is that they need to agree to these practice changes, and that they need to agree to change the way in which they are doing things. And we talked about those changes. We'll also review them in a second because we have a video from Kevin Sears, the NAR president, coming up. However, according to the Almanac, 93 brokers would not be automatically covered by NAR's deal. Among them, some of the biggest names in real estate, including Compass, eXp Realty, Douglas Elliman, Redfin, Howard Hanna Real Estate, At Properties, HomeSmart, Weichert Realtors, United Real Estate, William Rivas, Fathom Realty, The Real Brokerage, John L. Scott Real Estate, Brown Harris Stevens, the Realty One Group, the Agency, and is that Baird and Warner? They're not in our market. So those are not automatically covered, but this is the one where Broke Agent Media reported last week where there was a nice little formula that they could do to settle the agreement. If they can't afford to settle that agreement, they have the option of litigating, basically. I think it's 110 days from the date this settlement was reached. They have the option to then approach and say, hey, we can't afford how much you're wanting to make us pay, so we need to relitigate that amount. There's nothing else at the bottom of this article. It just has the entire list of those 93 people and their billions of dollars in volume all the way down to the last. So interesting. Compass already settled. One of the phrases in this article I wanted to get to from Catchmark is saying his phone is ringing off the hook with people that want to settle and give them money, which is just kind of sickening. I mean, I wish we could have actually put up a good fight. I wish there were better attorneys. That's my personal opinion. So it looks like supposedly it's all going to be rounded up pretty quickly. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this, especially if you're one of those brokers that hasn't settled. Do you want to see your broker try to fight it, or do you just want to sell it and let's move on? I think a lot of people are just kind of done with it. It's maybe sad that our fees are going to that, or that your broker is going to be a bit inhibited by this. But I think a lot of people are just done with the whole thing. So in other news, and this is also, I mean, it's incendiary, really. Joe Biden says the NAR suit will save $10,000 for consumers. There were some recent comments that Joe Biden made. Let's just play those comments for you guys. Because I'd love for all you to hear this. And it doesn't really matter what side of the aisle you're on. The hang on. Share this tab instead. All right. So this was Biden delivers remarks in Las Vegas on lowering costs for American families. In this, he also highlighted that plan that he talked about in the State of the Union to remove title fees. He talked about some other housing costs. I think he talked about the $5,000 tax credit he's going to give homebuyers. And then he said this. Let me make sure my volume's up. All right. Then he said this. Okay. Somebody's saying that right. I gotta I'm just gonna redo that because the audio was not available for some. All right, here we go. Forget I have to reshare the tab or the article with the audio. All right, so if you have a link to this, by the way, or if you see this online, about 5:13 is when he starts talking about this. Try it again.
In addition, last week, the National Association of Realtors agreed for the first time that Americans can negotiate lower commissions when they buy or sell their home.
Rick says maybe it's best that we don't hear it.
On a typical home purchase, that alone could save folks an average of $10,000 on the sale or purchase. I'm calling on realtors to follow through on lowering their commissions to protect home buyers. And folks, we're also working to end the legacy of discrimination on the basis of home valuations. There you go, Scap.
The legacy of discrimination on home valuations is also being challenged. So there it is. He's saying that the realtor commission lawsuit, touting it as something that his administration has done, that's kind of interesting. If you're taking credit for it, you're basically saying that, hey, look at what my administration has done to these realtors. Jason Haber, who runs the AREA, the new association for realtors, did a video on this talking about how he was a Democrat, and yet it's kind of not a great idea to go after 1.5 million member organization, of which 60% or more are women, and the average income for that group is under $50,000-$60,000. He's saying, like, who are you attacking here? This is ridiculous. The other side of this, someone already said, Alex B. Closing. That's a good name, Alex. Alex said, commission has always been negotiable. And this is kind of the gross misrepresentation of what you're seeing in the media now highlighted from the president of the United States, which is kind of terrible. Like, I think if you ask Biden, how does commission work on a real estate deal? Honestly, he would have no idea. And that's part of the problem that led to the lawsuit, is the lack of transparency with what happens with commissions. So it's not necessarily Biden should know, right? He's in a position of authority. But the general consumer, it's not necessarily their fault that it wasn't communicated to them, because most real estate agents didn't have a buyer broker agreement that laid out, here's how the commissions work. Here's how much you're going to owe me unless I accept that from someone else and you give me permission to do so. So we've kind of stuck our own foot in it, I guess you could say. But at the same time, I feel like the people that are quote unquote in power, that are helping to make these decisions, should know how to properly frame what is happening and be honest, saying that this is going to take the burden off of sellers to pay the buyer agent fee. And now buyers will have to pay their own fee should they choose to be represented with the real estate agent. If they don't choose to be represented with the real estate agent, it is not known if this would save a buyer any money or not. It's predicted that it actually won't, because any dollar that the buyer saves is a dollar that the seller chooses to sell below market to that buyer. It's probably just not going to happen. Alex B. Closing said, we are fortunate that we had a buyer agency agreement in Colorado for ages. Same thing in Arkansas. We've had buyer agency agreements here for a long time. It's not going to be a huge change for my team, to be honest. Sold by Betsy. I love that. She said, like everything else, he is clueless. Well, okay. Maybe you hate Biden. Maybe you hate that situation. But I think you have to look at this with honest eyes and say, okay, in this particular instance, he's either wildly inaccurate or he's lying on purpose. It's one of the two. He's not correct, and it needs to be talked about. I mean, people have to say, like, this is not right. Commissions have always been negotiable. Now, is the case true that some buyer's agents may not have been able to negotiate the amount of commission that they were able to receive from the listing agent? Yes. Does that artificially inflate how much a buyer pays for a home? Probably not. There's probably not going to be much difference in how they pay for the home. Could it save some sellers in that situation? It could. So we'll see what happens. I think it's going to wind up saving some money for sellers, but I think it's going to put an additional burden on the buyers. I heard someone unmute in Clubhouse.
Yeah, that was Matt.
What's up, Matt LaMarche? How are you doing, sir?
Hey, good afternoon. Happy to be here. Long-time listener. So I think we need to find a slightly higher bar, not to get political, but, well, here goes. Than Sleepy Joe. But I've had conversations in the last week and a half with some really intelligent professional people, and it seems as though their past transactions within real estate have also been similar to what POTUS has experienced and cannot elaborate or articulate clearly. So we just need a slightly higher bar than that one that we've already set, I think.
The one good thing to come out of this is that the buyer broker agreements are going to be required. That's the best thing to come out of this. And I think we could have not had billions of dollars in money change hands, mostly going to the attorneys, in order for this to happen. Has anyone reached out to Catchmark, by the way, see if he wants to buy a new house with all that money? Just curious. I mean, it's kind of lot.
I slid his DMs. Yeah, I got a great referral partner there. So
I need to hop in his DMs and see if he wants to buy some investment property in Arkansas with all that money. I'd be happy to represent him on the buyer side, but he's going to have to pay.
To that point, though, did you see what the attorneys? Did you see the hourly rates that these attorneys were charging by chance?
No, I didn't.
Oh boy. Okay, so he and one other had thousands of billable hours. Like, I think he was 6,527. I think $1,600 an hour.
Wow.
So yeah, and the second guy had something like between 3,000 and 4,000 hours in, and his rate was slightly discounted comparatively at like 1,200 an hour. And I was like, man, I really screwed up by not going to law school.
I mean, it seems like the next class action lawsuit should be versus attorneys, right? And their rates that are incredibly high, maybe.
Let me know where it's from.
Well,
exactly.
What'd you say, Shani?
Exactly. Their model, especially if you look at, attorneys that specialize in personal injury or something of that nature, they typically get a third, right? Isn't that sick? Yeah. I mean, it's just so ironic to me, right? We need the attorney general to get, because otherwise there's no attorney that's going to file a lawsuit except for, someone that's in a government attorney, because their model is practically the same.
Yeah. It's extremely similar to real estate agents, and I would be interested to see how those rates are disclosed, actually. I know, I'm muttering my words. I know that I was sent a bill from an attorney once, and I had no relationship with that attorney, which was interesting. But because I called him and used his phone time, I was sent a bill, and I said, no, you just answered my question. You didn't tell me I was going to be billed. And he was like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, yeah. Rick said 40% now. Interesting. Yeah, there was a joke reel that someone put out there about a real estate agent charging by time. I think Derek put that out there. It was pretty good. So you'll look that up. All right. Well, the president of the United States spoke. So the president of NAR is not to be outdone. They sent an email. Was this Monday? We got sent this email. Here's what the email looks like. Earlier this week, I filmed a video to discuss key considerations in terms of the settlement agreement, which we recently announced to resolve home seller litigation. I also highlight the great work and advocacy our team is continuing to progress on behalf of our members and the communities they serve. So the video is interesting. This is what it looked like. I don't think you guys can hear this, so I'm going to mute it. So he starts off the first part talking about losing his broker and his mentor, which is also his father, who recently passed away, and thanking the community for that. But then he goes into the settlement and what that means for us. And Broke Agent Media did an article on this and basically said this video raised more questions than answers. He talks about how they didn't have a good decision in this. There was no good decision. And he broke down why they didn't appeal. And it was a $5.4 billion to appeal, and they don't have that money. So they have to put up that bond in order to appeal, and that would basically bankrupt them in order to appeal. And they said that we could not appeal and feel good about putting the organization in bankruptcy. So, okay, that makes sense. They couldn't afford the appeal. But then Broke Agent Media was like, well, why are you saying you would appeal if you never intended to appeal? That's part of negotiation. You can't show your cards to the other side like that, or else they're just going to say, hey, they're not actually going to appeal. We can keep this rate instead of, 400 and whatever million the settlement was. Let's just keep it at 1 billion. The other reason, he said, if they did settle, then it still left members of the organization exposed to future lawsuits. So they're trying to come up with some kind of settlement that would protect other members of NAR from additional lawsuits moving forward, even after NAR itself had settled. So that's not a good option. The third option was just to claim bankruptcy, to say, hey, we don't have the money to pay any of these, so we're out. And they thought that wasn't a legitimate way out either, because it would bankrupt the organization. I'm curious to know the ramifications of bankrupting a not-for-profit like NAR. Isn't it a not-for-profit? Like what would really happen in that situation? But it still doesn't protect, even if they just paid the settlement or quote unquote paid it by going bankrupt, it still doesn't solve the issue of a lot of other people not being covered. So option 4 was to settle. And they said that they had been trying to settle since day one, that they've always been open to a settlement, and that they continued to try to settle until it was finally done. Then he goes over the rule changes for realtors, and he said basically there's 2 main rule changes. He said compensation for real estate agents cannot be put on the MLS. However, you can still offer buyer broker compensation off of the MLS. And he said that he's confident in the members that we would figure out a way to offer that compensation. So that's interesting. They're really leaning heavy on members saying, I don't want to give up this money. We got to figure out a way, instead of providing a way, which that's, I guess, what they got in trouble for being part of the MLS that offers compensation. And then the rule number 2, the main one that he talked about, was that buyer broker agreements have to be instilled. And he talks about always being a fan of the buyer broker agreements, and that they've always tried to push those. And that was basically it. Now, Broke Agent Media wrote a follow-up article on this and said that this basically led to way more questions than answers. So they say, let's see, where's the breakdown? All right, so here's the continued questions. Why would NAR decide to settle when they publicly declared that they would continue to fight? Well, I mean, that's obvious. You can't say, okay, we're going to figure out how to settle. We've got to settle. We don't have the money to fight. Because if you say you're not going to fight, then they're going to keep that settlement way high. So I think that can be answered. Changes that real estate agents need to make. So they can't come out and say, like, hey guys, here's how you should have to do it now. Because if they did that, then they would be right back in the same hot water that they're in. So I think that's also kind of obvious why they didn't go that route. And then this other one said, why NAR hasn't debunked false narratives spread by the mainstream media. Now that they kind of tried with some information last week, but they didn't do a good job of it. So it's not that they're not doing it, it's that they're not doing a good job of it. And that's a totally different problem, but it is still a problem. Whether or not the DOJ played a role in NAR's decision to settle, I think that's without a doubt. Yes, it was said that Catchmark was communicating with the DOJ. I don't know if the DOJ was communicating back with NAR at the time, but I think that is something they've considered for sure. Why NAR couldn't project brokerages with over 2 billion, couldn't protect brokerages with over 2 billion in sales in 2022. So this is a good question because it does leave a lot of people open to litigation. And if the math is done, then the plaintiffs get about what the cost already was. So it just forces more of those companies to go settle individually instead of being protected. Seller concessions and VA buyers, which is interesting. One of the interesting notes is that the real broker is included in that. However, in a lot of the states that the lawsuit exists, real wasn't around. So even some of the newer companies with over 2 billion in sales are not protected. However, they weren't operating fully, or if they were, it was not with a lot of people. I mean, when I joined Real, we only had 4,000 people 2 years ago. So, I mean, their settlement should be a lot smaller than that. Seller concessions and VA buyers. He did mention at the end of the video that they were trying to work with litigators on stuff like that. But this is a big question that has to be answered for VA buyers. NAR dues, they claimed previously that dues would not go up in 2024. Those dues have already been paid. So we all want to know what's going to happen. He did say that they have to be efficient with their money in order to pay the fees and still provide the services that they want to provide to real estate agents. So it was an okay video. I think there's a lot left. There's a lot more questions still out there that I would love for them to be more specific on. But for what it was, a video from the president with a couple of quick notes, it wasn't bad. It just wasn't great. And I think real estate agents are really tired of just okay, especially when it comes to protecting our pocketbooks. They want something great. And that's why it leaves the door open to an organization like Area coming in and saying, hey, this is how we will be great. There's a consumer article about this. This is the first real consumer-facing article that was relatively unbiased that I have found. And so I wanted to share it. It's on CNBC. I think it was originally posted on NBC News. Rob Weil, W-I-L-E. So here's this article. It says, the title is Consumer Advocates and even some Realtors hail NAR settlement. We've opened up the entire industry to competition, quote unquote. The process of buying a home seemingly never been simpler. Find a property and listings on a website like Zillow, Redfin, or Trulia. Reach out to a listing agent, tour the property, and make an offer. I mean, that is true. But that buyer's going to get roasted. But for years, behind the scenes, experts say consumers have not been fully aware of the ultimate cost and potential conflicts of interest when searching for a home. Sorry, I hit the cough button. Price transparency is a good thing. He says increased competition is a good thing, and this will increase both. Maria Letton, an associate professor of Florida State University College of Business. I really welcome this change. When someone goes to look for a home today, in most cases, they are intercepted by a broker who has access to certain listings who will work with the buyer at no cost up front and help them get into a home. But therein lies a common misconception. Experts interviewed by NBC said, although a homeowner puts their property up for sale, must hire professionals to market their home, they usually fold that cost into a final price paid by the buyer. The buyer brings the entire purchase price to the table, and the seller gets to keep a little bit more of that after this ruling. Now that is the first interpretation of this rule that I see as kind of true. They're not saying that the buyer gets to keep it. They're saying the seller gets to keep more of that. So where's all this news saying that this is better for home buyers? This is not better for home buyers. So as part of the new settlement, the buyer should be fully appraised up front about potential fees and commissions they'll ultimately have to pay. I couldn't agree more. We've been doing that since 2007. That's because the agent requires a buyer to sign a formal contract with a broker laying out what services they'll be receiving. Yep. Alternatively, a home buyer could decide not to hire a broker and instead put their search cost towards a real estate lawyer or appraisal. Scap, you want to help somebody find a home? Or someone else with knowledge of the housing market? Is your fee still going to be the same to go search for homes for people, Scap? Oh, he just got on the phone. That's terrible. I just spilled coffee on myself.
He did that on purpose.
He did do that on
right?
purpose. He was like, I'm making a call. I'm not entering the fray on that one. Of course, for a property that's garnering, okay, so this said the seller could even offer the cost for the buyer's team, talking about if they wanted to use an attorney or an appraiser or a real estate agent to attract more buyers. Of course, for a property that's garnering a lot of attention, such buyer incentives are not likely to be on the table. And it talks about what happened during the pandy. But now with home prices leveling off, the playing field's leveling too, putting more buyers in the driver's seat. And the expert, Doug Miller, a real estate lawyer based in Minnesota. So all of you who are in Minnesota, I want you to keep Doug to his word. Go use Doug for your home search. Let Doug help you find a house and negotiate that for you. Write up the contract, walk you through the inspection, talk you down off the ledge for the appraisal when it comes in a little square footage lower than what you thought. Negotiate on your behalf, take you to close, final walkthrough, the whole bit. Doug says he'll do it for $1,500. So there you go. Now you can hire an attorney for $1,500 instead of paying $50,000 commission. He's a real estate lawyer based in Minnesota who helped launch the actions that led to the NAR settlement. Maybe he's getting a huge payday from the settlement, so he really can do that for $1,500 because he's making like billions of dollars. What's up, Jason Pantana? Ray, he says, thanks for joining the show. Frank Montro says there's an issue in low to moderate areas. Lots of buyers can't afford to pay the buyer agent fees. Well, that's a simple fix, Frank. They're just not going to use a buyer agent. They're going to work directly with the listing agent. What could go wrong, Frank? I mean, they save on the buyer agent fee, right? Whomever's prospective buyer chooses as a representative in the home buying process, the NAR settlement now formally bans the seller's ability to advertise commission for the buyer reps in the multiple listing service. For its part, NAR has maintained that the free market has always set commission levels, and they were always negotiable and even useful. So that's the part that kind of balances it all out. Offers of compensation help make professional representation more accessible, it says. Decrease offers for home buyers to secure these services, increase fair housing opportunities, and increase the potential for buyer pool. Increase the potential buyer pool for sellers. That's NAR said in its March 15th statement announcing the agreement. I think that's about it. The future of buyers will be in the driver's seat instead of that commission money going to their agent. It can now go directly to the buyer. In what world is that going to happen? That's interesting to me. Realtor Malka and the BTS says, doesn't that mean they can't offer it? It just means that they can't put it in the MLS. Yes, you are correct. And this leads to less transparency. You are correct again. Frank says, what are your thoughts of loan officers getting involved to represent buyers? I've worked with a couple of loan officers that thought they were involved in the home search process. And it's real interesting to see what they can do from behind a desk. So yes, I would say Realtor Maka and the BTS, you are correct that this is a lot less transparent than maybe they were once hoping for. If you recall, the DOJ said actually that the commission should be publicized on Zillow, Trulia, Realtor.com, those realtor-facing websites, that the MLS should put out the buyer agent compensation so it's available for all buyers to see. And apparently that didn't change anything as far as those rates go. So now they want to hide that, and it'll now be between the buyer and the buyer agent of how much they can accept. And then you have the seller and the listing agent deciding if they want to offer buyer agent compensation or not, what that buyer agent compensation is, and then they can offer it. This is the only savings I see from this is for agents that can't negotiate their commission or can't provide the services to buyer that would be worthy of a higher commission. In that instance, they will accept a lower commission. And what that looks like is that they have to put on the paper, I'm only going to take, let's just say 1%. I'm only going to take 1%. If the agent says that, and the listing agent says, hey, the seller is offering a 2% buyer agency compensation, then the seller or the buyer agent's going to say, well, my fee's only 1%. So either the listing agent or the seller will get to keep the extra percentage. It's not really clear how that's going to work out yet. It'll depend on the paperwork. So that's the way that money will be saved. It's not going to be saved from a lower purchase price. It's not going to, it's going to be the seller saving the money in an already seller's market. It's still a seller's market. It is going more buyer in some markets, but it's still leaning towards seller. Some sellers are making some concessions, but it's still, we still need the inventory. So in a really hot seller's market, you're going to have situations in which the buyer agency compensation completely goes away and you have 54 offers, some represented, some not represented. So we'll see how it plays out. Dusty Martin says, I don't know a single attorney in my fee that I don't know a single attorney in my area that discloses their fee. Many charge 500 plus just for a consult. If no fee, they bill you for it, and at hiring, and they usually don't disclose their hourly rate until billing. Yeah, so NAR is putting its agents ahead of doing what we pay them to do. Yeah. And she says, well, they definitely are not lobbying as they should. Otherwise, House Veterans Committee and the VA wouldn't have been blindsided by my question. Yeah, Dusty says she called the House Veterans Committee and the VA about the NAR settlement to get word from them and say, hey, veterans won't be able to pay their buyer agent and the seller doesn't have to offer buyer agent compensation. And because of that, what's going to happen? And they said, we don't know. They were blindsided by the decision. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. Davis, what's up, Jason Davis? He said, you're right about less transparency, but nothing much will change when the dust settles. I think you're right in Arkansas because many agents like myself have been operating for years with buyer broker agreements already in place. And we state that this is our fee. This is, you allow us to take partial or complete payment of that fee from the seller or the listing firm. And we tell them that they are due anything that's left. And usually there's nothing left, but we tell them that's what they're due. And he says, sounds like you need to check out Davis Law Firm. We disclose fees up front. That's good. That's good, Jason Davis. Changing the law industry one suit at a time. And you could either take that as a suit or as a suit. All right. So a lot of people are confused whenever they say that this leads to increase in transparency. The reason why it leads to an increase in transparency for some states is because some states have never had buyer broker agreements or never required buyer broker agreements. So the lack of transparency was, I'm your real estate agent, I'm charging you for money, and it's being paid by someone else. So this increases that transparency now that you see they're your real estate agent, your representative, they're charging you money and they're getting paid from someone else, or they represent the seller and they're getting paid and they're not representing you. You will know that up front. So that is the transparency increase. The decrease in transparency is what any seller is offering for buyer agency compensation. And this is the part where Kevin Sears said, real estate agents are going to figure out how to do that. He's trusting us to come up with a way to figure out how to do that. We'll see if that actually happens. Yawn on Clubhouse changed his profile picture to the marked safe from the NAR. Is it the NAR post? The NAR lawsuit. That's good. I love that. Okay. Let's see. I think there's that it? Oh, there. All right. That's all we have on the NAR lawsuit. Anyone want to jump up and make any comments? Scap, I talked about you, but you got on the phone as soon as I asked you if you were willing to show property to people as an appraiser and help negotiate their purchase. Is that something you want to jump into? I know you're also a lender now. So you can do lending, appraisal. All you got to do is just get a real estate license, and then you can jump into that fray too, man. He's not here. I see that you're here. He's not commenting.
Yeah, I was gonna say, he's just being really, really quiet. I do have an interesting thought here, though, and I posed this to our office a couple of days ago. So here in Atlanta, Georgia, we've been in a seller's market for like going on 10 years now. How do you think this is going to change based on market dynamics for, say, a buyer's market?
Yeah. So in a buyer's market, you have an increased inventory, so it's easier to find a home, right? It is easier to negotiate because you have more sellers that are willing to come off of whatever the list price is. So you could argue that in a buyer's market, a buyer doesn't seem to need agent representation as much unless the listing agent is really great. Then they won't know, and they'll feel like they have a really good deal, and they've just been taken to the cleaners and broken a record for that real estate agent per square foot in the area. So there's, for instance, I had a buyer send me a property, and they also had gone through the trouble of pulling comps. And I always pull comps whenever a buyer wants to buy a property. They're like, hey, what do you think about this one? We've already pulled comps. It looks like it's priced well below market. And so I looked at the property and to see, I was like, well below market. Let's take a look. I said, do you want to go take a look at it, or do you want me to run numbers first? They said, run numbers first. I said, okay. So I pulled comps, and it looked like it was priced sky high. Well, it's because I know how to read comps, and my clients, bless them, they pulled 3 houses that were incredibly similar to this home that sold 2 years ago. And where they were pulling it from, it looked like a recent sale, but that's because the website was incorrect in their data. So you could argue, well, somebody that's extremely well trained can run their own comps and save money for a real estate agent. Okay, that's fine. But there have been times where something else comes up, like in the negotiations, where a client says something they should or shouldn't. I've had buyers that try to go unrepresented and purchase homes, and I'll just be casually having a very casual conversation with them, and they tell me everything I need to know in order to tell my client, and they pay a much higher price than they should based on what my client was willing to sell the property for, just based on my casual conversation. And so I think there's a lot of avenues where an agent can still show their value. But in a seller's market, like you're talking about, Matt, or a buyer's market, like you're talking about, it's going to be the finding the home thing goes out the window as the value prop. If that's your only value prop, then you're going to have some trouble in a super healthy buyer's market. If you're in a situation where your value proposition is, well, in a seller's market, I can help you find a home. That's the hardest thing, right? So I'm going to go door to door for you. I'm going to door knock. I'm going to find additional inventory. We're going to look at off-market properties. If you have a value prop that has stuff like that and say, yeah, we've got a list of off-market properties that maybe you could get a better deal on, then I think you have a leg up. But you have to modify your offering as the market dictates. I don't think you could just have one process or one program and say, hey, we're going to call it a day. This is our buyer program and it fits every market. So that would be my opinion. You have to change regarding what's happening in the market. One of the most helpful things that we do for our clients is not waste their time. In a market where there are 100 homes that they could choose from, we, based on their criteria, go through the research and the hard part of filtering what they would actually be interested in and not interested in to maybe 10, or in a long stretch, 20, but usually around 10. And if we can find 10 good options for them that are a match, then we take them and say, this is what we think is the best match because of this, this, and this, and here's everything you wanted, and here's everything it has. And when they ask about another property that's on the market, one of those other 100, we can say, well, we've already researched that, and here's the reality of it, and here's how it sits, and here's the things that you said you wouldn't like about it. Though we can still go look at it, here are the things that we've already looked at for you. Because anyone can show you a number of bedrooms and bathrooms and square footage in a particular area. Any idiot can open that door and any idiot can open that door for a very low fee. But to find your home based on exactly what you want, that's going to be a different set of skills. And agents that have those skills are going to make the most money in the future market. I think they'll be fine.
Hi, Ray. All right.
What's up, Jan? How are you, man?
How's it going? It's been ages since I logged into
I know.
Clubhouse.
Welcome back.
Yeah, great to see everyone.
We're still here.
Yeah, I know. And last time was COVID, and now is the NAR, so everybody's gonna huddle together and they're gonna pass through there.
That's so true.
Yeah. So I had a couple points I wanted to make if there's time.
Yeah, go ahead.
Beautiful. So what I want to, I don't want to be political, but unfortunately, again, whoever sets rules is some college graduate or someone who has never done this in their life. They come in, they set some new rules. They think they're fixing an issue, but they're creating a whole lot of new issues. So that excerpt you played from the president is so unfortunate that people have no idea what they're doing, and they think they're helping, but they're damaging an industry. So the points I have, the first thing is, to me, this rule is gonna hurt those people that is gonna, or is this like a low down payment, someone who was, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So those people that were supposed to be helped, like they have very low down payment, low credit, they were the last offer to be considered. They basically have no representation because they can't afford to pay a commission. The seller and their agent doesn't want to represent them, so they are not loved in any book. So those are not helped at all. So that's one point I want to make. The benefits are, I think, like you said, those agents who have value to add, they're gonna like become the king in this market because they have a lot to offer. And then the buyers will be willing to even sign an agreement paying them 3%, 4%, even more than what they would get paid. So they make more money, but they just need to bring in more value. I also wanted to mention something. I did a research. The United States is one of the very few countries, if you didn't know, that had this system that the seller pays the commission. Yeah. I saw that France, Cyprus, and a few other countries that like in South Africa, they do that. But majority of countries, the buyer pays their commission. They happily do that because they do need the representation. I think this is going to also help us with when they say, "Oh, I have a cousin or my brother has a license, he never used it." Those guys will be out because the brother is not going to be willing to pay him a commission, and he's not going to do it for free. So again, that's something good for us. So again, I don't think it's going to hurt those agents who have value, but it's just going to hurt the people that is designed to help. Like a lot of these other rules, when the government comes in to fix something, they break the whole system. Yeah. And it's so unfortunate that the NAR is such a disappointment. They were not even willing to fight for us. Yeah. They were just, give us the paper, we'll sign any settlement you want. So
did Reagan say that the scariest phrase is, "Hi, we're from the government, we're here to help"?
Exactly.
Tavo Life says you are absolutely 100% correct. He said the buyer on the lower spectrum will be hurt most by this nonsense. Yeah, I would agree with that. I didn't play some additional remarks. Let me bring back up the president, because I do want to play this remarks about discrimination, and I want to challenge the way you hear this initially. Okay, so I'm just going to play it. This is right after talking about how much lowering real estate agents' commission could save. He says this.
$10,000 on a sale or purchase. I'm calling on realtors to follow through on lowering their commissions to protect home buyers. Folks, we're also working to end the legacy of discrimination on the basis of home valuations. It's exacerbated.
Legacy of discrimination on home valuations.
Exacerbated racial wealth gap, held back Black and brown families, and it's simply wrong. If you build if a developer came along and built 20 homes on one side of a highway and 20 homes on the other, and the one side had people with Black and brown backgrounds, and the same exact home was built in a white neighborhood, guess what? The day you own that home, that Black home is worth 20% less than the white home.
Okay. So he says if a developer develops 20 homes on one side of the street, 20 homes on another side of the street, and one side of the street has black and brown, the other side of the street has white. He said the day you buy on the side of the street with the black and brown, it's worth 20% less than the white home. Okay. That sounds like some kind of discrimination against home prices, right?
Oh my God.
But wait,
that's even
wait,
worse.
Jan. Isn't it also that the developer built homes and priced them lower in an area that has lower affordability versus, I mean, what the alternative is to build that home and then charge the same price. But now you're going to be like, oh, these developers are gouging people in the communities that should be more affordable. Like, that makes no sense to me. Like, you can't have it both ways.
It's not accurate.
You can't have it both ways. So,
and it's so
Yeah.
inaccurate, right? I'm from California. In LA, we have a city called Inglewood, if you have heard of it. And then we have the Rams Stadium built in there. And it's, a lot of African-American community live there.
Yeah.
But I can tell you for the fact that the home prices over there have tripled, quadrupled. I mean, I've bought a home for my client a few years ago. That home is worth 5 times more. So
Yeah.
this is not even correct or accurate. I mean,
it's
totally
interesting
is irrelevant.
Well, and if you do have lower priced homes on one side, it allows people to get into home ownership for less money, which is what they're wanting to do. So I don't know. All right, we're going to change. Let's change directions here. We're still going to stay on the law side. Do I have the LA law sound effect? I had it somewhere on my soundboard, but it's just, oh, here it is. We're still going to stay with the law stuff. But this time it's against one particular brokerage for changes they made, and everyone could see this lawsuit coming. If you're a fan of Keller Williams and Gary Keller, just plug your ears. It'll be okay. All right. So former Keller Williams agents sue over profit share changes. If you recall, several years ago, they said, okay, starting in 2020, anyone that now leaves and works at a competing brokerage, they will not be able to continue to receive profit share. And that's what the new agreements say. Okay, that was fine. But then they said, actually, you know what? We're going to make that retroactive. So anyone that has been receiving profit share from us now cannot receive the profit share from us if they're currently working at a competing brokerage. Now, some would say this is changing the agreement and breach of contract, because this is what you agreed to when you said that you will be able to continue to receive once you're vested, and you'll be able to will this to someone in the future, blah, blah, blah. You could also say that they should have seen this coming, that they maybe shouldn't have done this at the time. Maybe they should have already had this in place. How could you not foresee someone leaving your company and working for another company? Some agents are saying, well, when you have to be a broker, I'm not a broker. I'm just a real estate agent. So I'm not really competing with Keller Williams, who's trying to recruit agents. I'm just working as a real estate agent. So here's the interesting part of this. There were 2 complaints filed. Keller Williams agent Jerry L. Mulder, former Keller Williams agent Jerry L. Mulder, served with KW brokerage from 2002 to 2011, filed a complaint in March 22nd, seeking class action status at the U.S. District Court for Western District of Texas in San Antonio against Keller Williams Realty. The complaint seeks $250 million in damages, alleges breach of contract, unjust enrichment, and seeks an order from the court rolling back the changes announced last summer in its profit share program. A day later, on the 23rd, David L. Burker, Bueker, who was a KW agent from 2003 to 2011, filed an identical complaint without the damages figure in the U.S. District Court of Eastern Missouri, specifically prohibiting the redistribution of disputed payments under the profit sharing program. Now, you might think, oh, well, that's interesting. KW should have seen this coming. They did. As a matter of fact, they have, in the decision that was made to not pay these people, they also included a way for them to pay for all these fees. It says, quote, to the extent that the disputed profit sharing program funds are distributed to other profit sharing program participants during the pendency of this action. Oh, wait, sorry, that's part of the lawsuit. Hang on. Here it is. Under the revised policy, former KW agents who actively compete against our brokerages will receive less profit share, so it was taken down to 5%. Importantly, this change does not enrich Keller Williams Realty. These funds continue to only enrich the affiliated real estate agents, investors, and brokers and staff. It says, I'm trying to find the exact wording here. All right, the benefit received by accepted defendant Keller Williams was the expense of the plaintiff to allow the defendant Keller Williams to retain the benefit of the. All right, I'm sorry, I'm getting in the weeds here. But basically, it says, and I can't find the exact quote, but it says in here that their policy. Oh, here it is: administration of the defense of the profit sharing program. Any and all funds in the profit share program may be utilized by KWRI for administrative or defense of the profit share program, including to cover all costs, attorney's fees, expenses, sums, money, debts, interest payment, losses, damages, settlements, fines, penalties, assessments, and judgments incurred, levied, or resulting from any claims or disputes relating to the profit share program. So this was in the provision in which they changed this. So they've already prepared for the lawsuit, but this lawsuit has been filed. Comments on this were interesting. A lot of people said that they were part of KW during that time. They received my notice of from 95% to 5% reduction in profit share. I hope someone would file this. There's a lot of people talking about what they did for KW. This guy says on the commercial side of things, KW did more than just drop the profit share. It allowed a wide range of changes that substantially reduced the profit share paid monthly. My last deposit, March 2024, was 47 cents. He said, I launched the KW commercial program in the greater Philadelphia MSA, and all my first line remained there, so it shouldn't be anything but growth. So there are a lot of comments about people wanting to join the class action, but there it is. There you have it. So KW going to court again. After they settled the NAR, they just can't stay out. So we'll see. Somebody said they couldn't hear Biden earlier, but it was very quiet, very quiet. Sorry.
I think
Can't turn that up anymore. What's up, Shawnee?
I thought it was unfair. I mean, when I read about it, I'm like, so if you agreed to pay these people, I never worked for KW, and then you're suddenly taking away because they leave the brokerage. Was that part of the original agreement? No. So I don't agree. I just don't see how they could do that. I don't blame them for the people for wanting to take action, because that doesn't seem fair. You know, you agree to something in writing and you change it.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in the do right rule, and it sounds like this was they're not doing right. They're not doing what they said they would do, and that's one of my biggest pet peeves. You can't, anyone that says I'm going to do this and doesn't do it, I have a real hard time working with them at all. All right, so let's talk about some economic news. Mortgage demand, and I disclaimer, I was at KW for just a couple of years, but I didn't make any profit share. I didn't make a dime. So I cannot be in the in the class action, because what am I going to sue for? All right, so mortgage demand stalls even as interest rates moderate. So the usually busy spring housing market is underway, but mortgage demand still isn't moving. Application volume was essentially flat last week, dropping 0.7% compared with the previous week, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association seasonally adjusted index. Applications to refi fell 2% for the week and were 9% lower than the same week a year ago. Applications to purchase a home decreased 0.2% before they were 16% lower year over year. So we're still going down. Last year, it was also lower versus the previous year. And that previous year was kind of nuts because everything that happened during the COVID. Purchase applications were essentially unchanged as homebuyers continue to hold out for lower mortgage rates for more listings to hit the market, said Joel Kahn, MBA economist. Kahn. Yeah, go ahead and shout it in the comments. Lower rates should help free up additional inventory and the lock-in effect is reduced, but we expect that will only take place gradually as we forecast rates will move towards 6% by the end of the year. So they're still predicting a rate drop, but it's going to take longer. Higher for longer has been the reprieve that we've heard a lot. And that is indeed what we were seeing so far. So if this is different in your area, drop it in the comments. If people are just like buying a house right and left, applying for mortgages like crazy, I want to know, and I want to know what market that's in. But even in our market, it's slowed down a little bit. So I think this is going to be kind of standard operating procedure, just a slow summer sale. They'll probably talk about the slow summer sale slump or something because it's great alliteration. The other thing that may be keeping people from jumping into the fray is that the home price growth continues to accelerate at its fastest pace since 2022. What? How is home prices still going up? U.S. home price growth continued to gain momentum at the start of the year, with growth in January reaching its fastest annual rate since 2022, according to the S&P Case-Shiller Home Price Index. The National Home Price Index saw a 6% annual increase in January 2024 and a 0.4% increase month over month on a seasonally adjusted basis. In December, the index reached 5.6% year over year, so it continues to increase the rate in which it's going up. U.S. home prices continue to drive higher, Brian D. Luke said, head of commodities, real and digital assets in S&P Dow Jones Industries. Our national composite rose by 6% in January, the fastest annual rate increase in 2022. Stronger gains came from our 10 and 20 city composite indices, rising 7.4% and 6.6% respectively. Now, those were previously down a lot compared to that. So this may be a little bit of recovery in those areas. For the second consecutive month, all cities reported an increase in annual prices, with San Diego surging 11.2%. On a seasonally adjusted basis, home prices have continued to break through the previous all-time highs set last year. So the rate of increase is not as high as it was in 2021, 2020, but the increase is still happening. We're still seeing increases. And this is the graph from the S&P Core Logic Case-Shiller Indice. So you can see where we are right over here on the far right of the graph. And the 10 city composite index is the light. They could have used different colors. It's for the audio listeners, it's an all black and white chart. And some lines are thin, some lines are thick, some lines are dotted. And so it really, so in the 80s, and I would say up until 2006, the lines are quite divergent. They're kind of a little bit all over the place, extremes one way or the other. But then it all kind of starts to roll together. But it does take you see the huge dip in 2008 and 10. And this is what I've told people, like there's only 2 recessions that home prices have dropped. One was in the early 90s, 91, and one was in 2009. Home prices dipped 19% then, but everywhere else, home prices have continued to rise from anywhere 3 to 6% on average. And that is what we continue to see here. So if you have followed the news over 40 years, this is not surprising news. But if maybe you just tuned in last year to see the gloom and doom that was supposed to be headed our way, and of course the YouTubers talking about all kinds of crashes that will be taking place, you may be sorely disappointed or pleasantly surprised to find that home values have continued to keep their prices. Typical household earns roughly $30,000 less than needed to afford the median priced home, but that's an improvement from last year. So we just did an article recently how people needed $80,000 more to buy a home this year than in 2020. But when you look at the year over year cost, that's only $30,000 more compared to the previous year. So buyers need to earn $114,000 to afford the typical U.S. home. That's 35% more than typical household makes. But that's an improvement from October, when buyers needed to earn a record 51% more than the median household income. So the typical U.S. house earns $29,448 less than it needs to afford the median home. That's based on the Redfin's analysis of the estimate and the median household income and median monthly housing payments as of February 2024. Here's the chart. So you can see the typical household makes 29% or $29,000 less than needed to afford the home. The only time it was, February 2021, the typical household made $3,797 more than it needed to afford a home. So I thought this graph was super interesting because for years we've heard about the split and how much somebody needs to make to afford a home. And it sounds like since, the TikTokers and YouTubers make it sound like since the 1940s and 1950s, It's just become so unattainable and people are making so much less than what they need. But what we really see in this graph is it's a fairly recent phenomenon. So that was kind of heartening that's probably not the word I'm looking for, but that's the word I came up with. Encouraging, because I think because it's such a recent trend, it seems like it could also be reversed fairly recently as well. It's not like this giant hole that's completely unattainable that you have to climb out of. It's something that was basically created during the COVID pandy because of the decrease in supply and the increase in demand. A lot of that was people changing because they wanted to get out of the most populated areas into the suburbia. And so prices in suburbia went up. And then prices in some of those main cities were decreasing for a little bit. They are, or not increasing as much, but there still is now this huge supply glut as people have moved all around the country. They're still looking to move all around the country. We're still getting a huge influx of people moving into our state, which is unusual because before the COVID pandy, we were sending a lot of people out. I would always joke about how Arkansas raises incredible talent and then we send them out throughout the rest of the world. Well, it looks like we still have more people coming into our state. And the more and more people that come to our state, the more expensive the homes become because there's fewer homes for people to choose from. And I did an analysis for the home builders in our area of the new construction homes, where they were priced and what basically the gap was. And I told them, like, here's the price home that you need to build. And they said, we can't afford to build there. And I said, if you don't afford to build there, a national builder will come in and fill that gap. And that's exactly what's happening. So I think that's what you're going to see is national home builders are going to make up this gap in affordability of people that are on the edge. And then you're going to have local home builders, custom home builders that are kind of building in the upper echelon. They're going to get a little more competitive as the number of people that move up into those ranks want to sell what they currently have. So I'm curious to see how much this will reverse, how fast it will reverse. You know, if the economy begins to take off again and more people are making more money, then it's going to increase the amount of inflation we have. Stuff's still going to get more expensive. Houses are still going to get more expensive. The only way around it is if we have a sudden increase in supply. That's the only way that the homes are going to kind of moderate or at least stay the same. If they continue to go up more than 6%, 10% every year, then it's going to be hard for incomes to catch up. So we will see what happens. Dusty says she's still getting transplants, mostly political refugees. Politics are a huge reason why people are moving here. They don't really come out and say it, but they hint at it big time. Okay, so another phenomenon that's happened recently, because we've been talking about the rent versus mortgage comparison. Rents are also now more affordable than buying, but now it's in every major U.S. market. Matt Lamar says job growth is the largest relocation reason for Atlanta. Yeah. I think you're going to see that happen in major markets. What's rent like in your market? Is it still cheaper to rent, or is it now cheaper to rent? Austin and Seattle were the friendliest cities for renters, as the monthly mortgage payment on a starter home in each of the top 50 cities soared above the average rent by more than $1,000. Elevated mortgage rates, high home prices, and low inventory have combined to make renting more affordable than buying in all of the top 50 United States metro areas, including, according to a new report from Realtor.com, mortgage payment on a starter home in the top 50 most populated areas now costs an average of $1,027, or 60% higher than the typical rent payment. Ooh, that's quite a bit higher. 60% higher. That's more than half higher than your rent. Yeah, I think that'll leave a lot of people renting, because not only do you have an increase in the mortgage payment, but also your home maintenance is a lot more. You know, if your AC goes out and you're renting, you just call the landlord. But if your AC goes out and you own, then the cost of home ownership has just gone up. I think maybe another reason why the rents have gone down is because the influx in multifamily properties. Are they comparing single family? Let's see. Mortgage payment on a starter home, while renters expect to save. It doesn't say. Yeah, it doesn't say if they're single family rents or if they're multifamily rents. But we know that we had a huge influx in the multifamily rent. So that alone is going to put pressure even on single family rental units. That's still, multifamily still puts some pressure on it as there are fewer renters looking. So that could have something to do with it. We know that a lot of the multifamily developers have kind of taken a step back a little bit. So we'll see. Housing market update, supply. Ooh, we've been waiting to hear this for so long. Are you ready? Supply. Housing market update, supply climbs 5%. That's the biggest increase in nearly a year. Woo woo. Total number of U.S. homes for sale climbed 5%. That's the biggest year-over-year uptake since May 2023. During the 4 weeks ending March 17th, new listings rose 15%, which is the biggest increase since June 2021. Yay! The surge in listings is bringing some buyers back to the market. Mortgage purchase applications and Redfin's home buyer demand index is a measure of requests for tours and other buying services. They're roughly up 9% month over month. However, we just talked about a story that came out this week, which is more recent than this story, talking about how mortgage applications to purchase are down a little bit. So that number could moderate, but it's good to see new inventory coming on the market. It's a lot more fun to go show homes. I recently was showing homes in our marketplace from the 5 to 650 range. And that's considered luxury in our market. You can buy really nice houses in that price in our market. And we had tons of homes to choose from. There was no shortage of inventory in that price range. So we'll see if that continues. But we saw like 10 homes that were all kind of matchy with what they were looking for. So the more situations like that, then the better for my clients who are looking. It does make it more challenging though for the listings that we have, because they have to be more competitive now. Nepo-Homebuyers. We talked about this before. Just some recent data that came out that kind of backs up what we've already discussed. More than 1/3 of Gen Z and Millennial homebuyers plan to use family money for the down payment. More than 1/3, 36% of Gen Zers and Millennials who plan to buy a home soon expect to receive a cash gift from family to help fund their down payment. That's according to a Redfin commission survey. Here's the graph. It says more than 1/3 of Americans are using cash from family. What they don't say is that 60% save directly from paychecks. Interesting. That would be a more interesting headline to me than 30% are using Nepo money, but work a second job, 39%. And then it goes 30% cash from family, 36% cash from family. 29% say they're going to sell stock investments for a down payment. I mean, good on you, millennials and Gen Z. 22% say pull money out of retirement funds early. Okay. 21% say sell another home. 16% say inheritance. 13% lives with parents and family to save money. I thought that number would be higher, actually. Sell cryptocurrency investments, 13%. So there's as many millennial and Gen Zs out there living with their parents as there are who will sell cryptocurrency investments to pay for their down payment. Take equity from another home I still own, 12%. So that means they're not going to put it on the market. They're just going to get like a HELOC. Contribute less to retirement savings. Oh, I mean, hopefully you don't have to make that decision. You can do both. Contribute maximum amount to retirement savings and put some back. All right. So young home buyers are twice as likely to use family money. Interesting graph. And then last news story today, Pacaso. We talked about Pacaso when they first launched. We updated a little bit here and there, but now they're getting
unknown caller.
Oh, sorry. I'm still getting, I don't know why I put it on do not disturb, but I still get calls. I got to figure that out. Vacation home co-ownership platform Pacaso expands to lower price listings. So they've previously been focused on the big, basically the second home market, luxury homes, and you could buy a portion of that home. You could own a portion of that home using Pacaso. And it's almost like a timeshare, but not, because you actually own the home. Quote, you could afford a lot more when you could buy 1/8 or 1/4 of it when compared to purchasing the whole thing. And we're living in an environment right now where housing affordability is a problem, said Austin Allison, co-founder and CEO of Pacaso. Home prices are high and interest rates are high. So it's really difficult for people to afford the home of their dreams. Unlike timeshares and resorts where consumers buy time, not the property, Pacaso owners can benefit from the home's value, which usually goes up over time. So you're not buying time in the home. You're actually buying a portion of the home. Our owners who have resold have benefited from about 10% appreciation above and beyond what they paid for the underlying home previously. So Pacaso shares generally track with the underlying real estate. I think it's a better option than a timeshare. But I don't know, man. Owning a percent of a home. Dusty says, LOL, except these people can't really live there. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's just an investment. It's like an investment property, but I think they can live there for some time. They get to like vacation in or something. People now using co-ownership as a way to be able to afford houses they can't otherwise and wouldn't be able to afford. So it's not just happening in vacation home space. I don't know, like what's the context that you would buy a portion of a home that you can't afford, but not live in it full time? If it's not a luxury or vacation secondary home. Amanda Eckhart says, I like the idea. Everything is set up, but you can use it if you want to rent it. I assume it could be rented for their portion. Yeah, that's what I don't know, especially if you go to the same spot repeatedly. But that's Amanda, I agree with you, but that's the attraction of the vacation home / luxury home. What they're saying now is that you could buy just like a regular house. And I don't understand that attraction. Why would I buy a regular house with Pacaso and own a portion of it if it's not a destination home of some sort? Maybe having an Airbnb in a busy metro, but wouldn't that be a destination? I don't know. I can't figure out the context in which I like the idea of investing in a portion of a home and just renting it out long-term rent. I guess that's what they're doing. Maybe it's a long-term rental and they own a portion of it so they get the benefits of the appreciation plus the rental income that comes in as a portion of how much they own. Regular as in not luxury. Correct. It is not necessarily luxury this time. Pacaso is saying that they operate in more than 40 markets nationwide and only in a handful are we misunderstood. Our approach is to work with policymakers to educate them on the facts and benefits. Our belief is that over time this will prevail. It hasn't worked in Sonoma yet. Small handful of communities who have passed ordinances to resist the model. The company has, however, seen some backlash from communities like Airbnb has. That's kind of what it says. Let me see if they have it in the article. I didn't read it the first time. I didn't see it the first time I read it. Yeah, it just basically says you can afford more home now. So I guess it's a long-term rental situation instead of a short-term rental. You can own the property. I mean, you're not living there full-time, right? Maybe you buy a portion of the property. Pacaso and their investors buy the other portion. You live there full-time, quote unquote, paying rent, but you get the benefit of about owning a portion of it. Maybe. Roughly 1/5 of primary home buyers last year purchased either with a friend or a relative, according to the real estate site Zillow. But how many of those didn't live in that regular home, purchasing with a friend or relative? Interesting. We'll see. Maybe a stepping stone for an investor, says Amanda. Could be. Your first investment is a percentage. I wonder what the actual profitability of that is, though, because if you're not looking at just long-term appreciation, I mean, that's only a 6% increase. I feel like you could just invest and buy some stocks, but I'm no investment whiz. All right, guys, thanks for hanging with me today. That's the entire show. That's all we have for you. I do have a group. I'm going to put this in the chat. I'll also put it on, it's not on there yet, but I'll also put this on my link tree. I'll put it in the stories. But I have a community that we just started over on WhatsApp. So I've been testing WhatsApp. I know. You've probably been contacted by Bitcoin guys. This is not that. I've been testing WhatsApp with some groups, and I actually really like it. I like the efficiency of the communities that they have there. And I can actually invite you to a community, and you could join it. And there's two main discussions. There's just a general discussion about what's going on in the economy. There's also an articles and topics. So you could submit articles and topics for us to talk about every week. So I'm going to put that in various places. I don't know if I'm going to post it in the comments, but I don't think you guys can click on it in the comments, but I'll try that. I'll put it there. We'll also put it in the description on YouTube so you can find it there. And it'll be on my link tree a little bit later this afternoon. It's Ray Zorback, RAYZORBACK on the Instagram. So thanks everybody for joining the show. I appreciate it. Drop in the comments what you think about these news stories. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, everybody.